I think it is very easy to be bought in by a good press conference from a new manager, especially when he's saying all of the right things. However, I take a lot of optimism and a lot of hope from what Iraola said in his press conference. And I want to tell you why. There was a lot of different things he touched on that I thought were not necessarily unique, but I felt were necessary that he vocalized early. I constantly talk about clarity. Maybe it becomes repetitive, but the things he touched on in this particular presser I thought were not just what he needed to say for his own maybe reputation, his own foundation, but also things that I think the fans were yearning for. Things fans needed to hear that maybe they weren't even aware of they needed to hear. Whether that was Iraola stating he won't live in a bubble, that he will go and experience the city. He seemed to be enthusiastic to connect to the fans on a personal level. His desire to keep Curtis Jones, the way he spoke about Harvey Elliott, the way he spoke about training, the way he spoke about talking to players who are finished at the World Cup and talking to them directly about what do they need, what do they want, what did they like about being at Liverpool in the last few years, and what did they feel needed changing. I felt like the amount of topics he touched on in a short period of time felt very diverse for a first interview. It wasn't just a case of we will do better, we will achieve. It was laying out a very clear foundation for what he thought Liverpool are and for what he feels Liverpool can be. The first thing that I want to touch on, though, when we break this down, is what he said regarding Harvey Elliott. Now, there's been one or two small rumours regarding Harvey Elliott's position at Liverpool being potentially utilised in a move for Adam Wharton at Crystal Palace. Obviously, none of this has particularly materialised. But Harvey Elliott, maybe not the hottest prospect on the market, but certainly is someone on the market I think a lot of mid-table Premier League teams may look at, or even potentially some European teams may look at as a viable option for a versatile number 10. Now, Liverpool are a team that needs squad depth. We're severely lacking it, and it's another topic Iraola touched on in his presser. The way he spoke about Harvey Elliott to me didn't sound like he was talking of a player who needed to prove himself in pre-season, but more so a player that I think Iraola wants to prove is belonging at Liverpool. I think Iraola seems to really like Elliott's attitude. He mentioned him returning a week early and how that was a good sign, and how this pre-season is an opportunity for Harvey Elliott to show what the world's been missing for the last year. I felt that was really positive, and I think that stems into how Iraola is viewing the use of the squad in pre-season. Of course, there are a lot of questions about the squad depth. He directly has said himself that Liverpool are in need of new signings. Of course, he mentioned that we have two already in Jaquette and in Munoz, but that more are needed and more are necessary. Which leads me on to my next particular point of the press conference that I thought was important, and that was the need of squad depth and squad rotation. A big criticism of Arnie Slot over the last 18 months, even during the good times, was a lack of rotation. Slot, very similar to some very good managers, had a select 14 players that he would use, and outside of that, he never really seemed to veer from. Iraola is very different to that. I'd even say he goes beyond Klopp in this respect in terms of squad usage. He wants to use every facet of the squad. So I think if you're in the team at the moment and your biggest issue over the last 18 months for Liverpool has been a lack of game time or potentially worrying about a pathway, I don't think that's going to be an issue under Iraola. You will get game time, you will get opportunities. A big question mark, obviously, around the squad is who is going to back up on the wing, who's going to back up in midfield, who's going to back up in defence. And I think this is an opportunity in pre-season for the likes of Rio Moore, obviously, but the likes of Will Wright, Jaden Dan, Stefan Bajcetic, McConnell, Neoni, to all stand up and really show, hey, listen, I can be a part of the Liverpool squad. I've always been a big believer of finding answers from within as well as on the market. I think a balance is needed. Not every answer to the Liverpool problem is going to be found on the market. I think Areola is going to look within for the solutions as well. Harvey Elliott being a certain name that I think he will look to. Now, beyond Harvey Elliott, he spoke very fondly of Curtis Jones in the later release quotes. He spoke very highly of Curtis Jones. He spoke about how he believed Curtis Jones was a phenomenal footballer, a excellent player, how he loved his attitude, and how he wants him to stay not just for next season, but for a much longer period of time. I thought this was really, really important moment of the presser because the words spoken here weren't of a manager just saying, we like Curtis Jones, we'll see what happens. I felt like it was a very clear message to the player. The manager supports you, the manager wants you, and you have a future here if you want it. He mentioned the importance of him being a scouser and understanding the club as well. I just thought he said all the right things here. Now, from Curtis Jones's perspective, a big issue he had under Slot, by the sounds of it, was a clash of personalities and felt like although he was used as shown, numerically, he was played. He never felt like he was used consistently enough or used in the right way. So obviously he disputed it. They disputed it right back quite often near to the end of last season, and then he was in and out the side throughout the season. So I think Curtis Jones can probably take immense satisfaction in the way Iraola is speaking of him. I think I'm sure I'm not talking out of turn here. I feel like Curtis Jones is a player who needs that support from the manager. And I think when a manager gives a public display of support so early on, that must fill you with confidence and it must fill you with at least an inclination that staying is the right choice. Now, in terms of Curtis Jones' options, of course, he rejected Nottingham Forest. He has Inter Milan who won't pay the fee. And I do believe his head has been turned by the idea of Italy. He must look at the likes of Scott McTominay and go, I can really build a good foundation out there for myself away from the cruel eye of English media. But I really believe Curtis Jones is going to stay. I think he is probably one of the players Iriola has spoken to privately. And by the sounds of it, he sees him as a core player for his plans. Which brings me on to my next point, the style of play. I thought something that was really important from this presser that Iriola spoke on was the need for him to learn, which you don't often hear from a manager at a big club. And I think if said in the wrong way, it can come across as a manager who maybe lacks confidence or maybe feels a little bit, too small for the seat. But for me, Iriola, the way he spoke, it wasn't a manager who was lacking confidence. It was a manager who really felt like he could take this challenge on and learn and progress with the team. He spoke about his desire and his enjoyment of facing low blocks. Now, he preferred to face low blocks, which is very refreshing after hearing not just under Slot, Klopp would complain about it as well, how low blocks were the bane of our existence. I think every fan at Liverpool, if you didn't know about low blocks in the last 4 years, you now know every intricacy and every detail of a low block because it's all you face, especially with the way we played on the Klopp and the way we play on the Slot. I have no doubt this season coming, Liverpool are going to face a lot of low blocks. But Iraola seems to have an immense desire to face that and find the solution for it. His preference is to be against a low block because when you're against a low block, you're the team in possession, which is where I think Curtis Jones will thrive in an Iraola system. I think Iraola knows that he can't sit there with the same type of player he had in the midfield at Bournemouth. He needs different players. He needs players who are not just great at pressing, but also very comfortable on the ball and in possession for long periods of time, which wasn't always the case at Bournemouth. Bournemouth had a low possession rate throughout the whole of last season. They would often be counter pressing, but also mostly just playing in a counter attack. They would sit back and then they would spring, or they would press high, win the ball back, and be very quick in moments. Liverpool will do that, but they're going to be playing against teams that are happy to not have the ball, that will happily play long and over the back line. One of the huge issues Liverpool faced with Slot last season, especially in the first couple of months, was the amount of balls that would just go in behind our defence, and we had no way of dealing with it, which again just comes down to your structure and your setup. I think something quite profound that I really enjoyed that he said was when asked, I think it was the first question, what message do you have for the Liverpool fans or sort of what type of team or style do you want to deliver? He spoke about delivering a team and a style of play that the fans can be proud of, and how important it is to cultivate the correct culture to where the performance on the pitch resonates with the fans. I was called a lunatic when I said this 4 months ago. I'm sorry, I'm not one to do it normally, but I was called a lunatic by a couple of unnamed individuals about this. Now the manager himself is saying it. The importance of curating the culture within the club, the importance of having the fans on side. It is essential for success. It is a key factor, especially at Anfield. He talks about making Anfield a fortress. One of the most essential things to making Anfield a fortress is giving the fans something to get behind. And I do believe his style of football will absolutely do that. The high energy, the intensity, the aggression, the desire, all before you've even kicked the ball, I think is something that the fans are going to absolutely latch to. Overall, listen, it was just a presser. Words mean nothing without action. I think that's an essential thing to keep in mind. Whether it's the new signings, whether it's your dedication to Curtis Jones, your style of football, or your desire to integrate into the city, the words are great, but the actions are just as important. So we will see how it plays out. Preseason has officially started today. I'm very excited. I think there's a lot to be excited about as a Liverpool fan right now. Yes, the transfers haven't came in as of yet. We don't know who will be walking through the door. We don't know who will be walking out the door, but I think the press conference gave Liverpool fans a moment of optimism, a moment of hope, and brought us back down to earth in the right way to kind of remind us things are okay. Things are going to be fine. Things are going to be more than fine. I think it was a very optimistic press conference. But yeah, what did you think of the presser? Did you like what Iraola said? Did you not? What are your thoughts going into pre-season? Who are you looking forward to seeing? Who do you think will not be here come the end of pre-season? Do you think answers can be found in Harvey Elliott? Do you think answers can be found in Curtis Jones? Or do you think maybe it's best for both to be moved on? Let me know in the comment section below. If you're watching this on X, I really do appreciate it if you share it. It just would be really sound if you did. And yeah, I will see you guys in the next video later this week.